Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 4 o'clock session of the Fall Projector Summit presented by Projector Reviews and sponsored by Sony. We must give them all props because without them, this would not be possible. And we're very happy that they have decided to support our effort to get together despite not being able to get together. So I'm real happy to be here. Phil Jones is here as well. He's going to be running the backstage this hour. Phil, so nice to see you. Thank you. And this hour, I am so happy to welcome Jason Russell from Screen Innovations. And Projector Reviews is all about projectors, but they ain't nothing without a screen. So I'm real happy to be talking with Jason today from Screen Innovations, one of the premier screen makers in the world today. Jason, welcome.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me. I'm really happy you guys put this together and we can be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you're coming at us from your office in Austin,
Yes, sir.
and we can't really see, but you showed us before the show that there's a little bit of culture going on there. There you got a ping pong table back
Oh, yeah.
there, which is great, man. You want a fun office environment to work in, right? And
It
it looks
is.
like
We
you guys
we have
have
a we have a great environment. This is kind of our war room where a lot of the different desk space is at, and so this is where the majority of the sales and support staff hangs out, works. We also have some different, products on display, and so it's a fun environment.
one. Yeah,
And
yeah.
every once in a while, a pickup game of some ping pong and all that good stuff.
Well, so let's get right into it. We're talking about screens here, and you know, to some people it's black magic. I mean, how do you even choose the right screen?
Scott, that's a great question, and I think because when people think about getting into projection, whether it's a home theater, do they just want a big screen experience for their home, whether it's a media room, home theater, dedicated space, not a dedicated space, or so on. What do they really think about? They're thinking about that box that they're going to hang from their ceiling that produces the video, but they don't
Hmm.
always think about what it is they're going to watch.
Right.
And I've got to give credit to one of our rep firms, Nick over at Frontline Sales in Minneapolis, who really gave me this analogy. We call it the race car analogy. And so when you think about how the interdependency of projection works, let's go for a race. So I'm going to give you two cars,
Okay.
maybe a Chevy pickup truck and a Dodge Viper. Who do you think's going to win
The
this race? Yeah, there they are.
Dodge Viper, of course.
Right. Naturally, everyone thinks that, oh, the Viper is absolutely going to win. But what we didn't get to tell you just yet was where is the race going to be located? And so we're going to do an
Uh-oh.
off-road race only. This is no track.
The
We're
Baja
out in the desert.
1000.
Yeah, like it's the Baja race. And so I'm glad that you picked the Viper. I'd love to go for a spin on the track sometime with you, but
Oh
since we're
yeah, man.
racing and I've got a four-wheel drive lifted truck, I'm gonna beat you, right? So it's
Yeah.
really important to understand um, where the screen is going to go because that track is our environment. And whether that's your
Mhm.
living room, your dedicated theater room, or so on, that's really important to get that correct. And so when we choose that environment, that's our race car analogy, right? The next thing that we want to help offset that environment, and we want to put the right screen material inside of it. And so these are the design considerations we go after. So you've got your racetrack. Now we know that where we're gonna have that race at. Now we need to pick two things. We need to pick a car and a driver. Well, the car is going to help me. That's our screen. It's the right car for the track. It's the right screen for the room that it's going in. Whether it's a room that has ambient light, you need ambient light rejecting technology to help counter that. So you can have a great image, great contrast, high brightness, everything like that.
Even
Then you
even
need
with
to step
lights
in
on
your,
in the room or whatever.
yeah, even with lights on in the room. I mean, the screen behind me, this is a very well lit up room. And so you choose the right screen for the room that you're going it into.
Right.
And then, now that I've got I know where I'm going racing, I know I've got my car, I've got to kind of buy the right driver. I don't want to
Hmm.
go out and hire a Baja racer or a rally car racer if I'm going to go down to Circuit of the Americas and watch an F1 race.
Right.
That driver's just not set up for that. So
Different skill
that's where
sets.
different skill sets and there's different interdependency that goes on between the design considerations, and that's what we look for, and that's what we try to help people decide on so they get the right overall solution, what works best in your environment, because every environment can be different.
Hmm.
Yeah. So with
So
different screen technologies to help offset those different rooms that are out there.
right. So tell us, I mean, I know that Screen Innovations has a variety of different cars.
Yeah.
for different environments. Tell us about some of them.
Yeah, we got a pretty expansive garage, you might say. So, when you think when you think about the different colors that we have available or different screen materials,
Yeah.
let's start with our white and grays, right? So, every screen manufacturer makes a white and gray screen.
Sure.
It's a very popular screen material, but you really need the right room. You need the right environment for that. So
Hmm.
you need, in order to maximize all those contrasts, I was fortunate to sit in on some of the other projector manufacturers, and I was listening to JVC's most recently, and they talk a lot about the contrast numbers, which is very important. But think about where those numbers even can come from. That's a test environment. We don't all have that test environment, or we don't all have that dark dedicated theater room. So they're
Hmm.
absolutely right. That projector can produce wonderful contrast. And what we want to do is we don't want to take anything away from what that projector is doing. So we
Right.
come up with this right screen to help maximize what that projector is doing in terms of color, contrast, and so on. And so if you've got a white screen, whether it's our entry level 1 series white, what we call gamma, all the way up to our high performance reference material, our Unity 1.0 gain screen, those are great in those environments where color accuracy is super important, and great picture image, but more dedicated rooms.
Right.
Now, if we go into some rooms like that are going to be your theater room, your multi-use room, your media room, whether it's a dedicated room, I don't always want to have my friends over and watch in the dark. So
Right.
I want some lights on,
Super
right?
Bowl party, Oscar party,
Super
that
Bowl
kind of
party. I don't want to sit in the room with 8 of my buddies watching the football game this weekend.
thing. Right.
Not with the lights off. I'm
Right.
happy to have them over, everything like that. But we want to keep the environment to be warm and inviting. Maybe it's in your media room and so on. And because of that, you need the right screen technology to help combat the light,
Hmm.
so you can maintain that brightness and that contrast out of that projector and really
Right.
watch the image. And we do
Right.
that with our award-winning black diamond and slate materials, which are high ambient light rejecting and our kind of middle tier ambient light rejecting materials.
Hmm. Let me
Yeah.
let me ask you one quick question. You mentioned white and gray screens, and I just wanted to quickly ask you, why would you choose white versus gray? What's the difference between them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And before I jump into that, let me address kind of a misconception that seems to be in the marketplace. People, I hear it day in and day out, hey, gray screens offer you better contrast. Gray screens
Right.
are better. Well, they may offer you better contrast because the base material is a little bit darker, which means as I'm trying to create black from a light bulb, I can get a little bit darker image.
Right.
But in a dedicated room, that's what we would consider like a movie theater environment.
Hmm.
A white screen can be very, very good for your color accuracy, and still be able to reproduce great contrast with the lights off. And so it really comes down to, I would choose like our Unity white screen in a reference theater where the lights are going to be down, and I really want to
The
get
walls
everything
and
I can out
ceiling
of
are
those
dark.
projectors. They're all treated, right? They're all treated with room darkening, either shades, or there's no windows, most likely. There's
Hmm.
the ceiling is treated, it's darker colors. And I'm not saying you have to paint it black, but maybe some earth tones that are just more neutral and darker,
Yep.
non-reflective.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure everybody kind of had a sense of white versus gray, because I get that question all the time. Um, but and so either way, you a white or a gray screen, you're going to typically put in a more dedicated environment.
Generally, yes. Yeah.
And then you've got ALR, ambient light rejecting, which we now have a
Correct.
picture of on the screen, and that's going to be obviously in a room with some ambient light.
Right. So if you take the ALR materials that are kind of the mid tier, like our slate, what's nice about these materials are they're flexible. You can do them in motorized options. You can do them in fixed bezel or zero edge options. Lots of different form factors for the design aspect of it that work. You can also you can have them acoustically transparent. They're perforated, so you can do different things with them. But they have optical layers or coatings on them that allow you to kind of readdress some of the ambient light in the room, so you can maintain the light from the projector and we can get contrast out of it. It's not just simply a darker screen. There's actually optical coatings on there that will generally redirect or absorb some of the different ambient light depending on what angle it's coming from. So they
Right.
perform better the wider the angle that light source is to it. So if the light's right overhead versus a window to the side and so on, they're going to perform better. The closer the light that's coming from where the projector's coming from, I've got to pay a lot of attention to that light. So I don't want to reject any of it.
You don't want to
So
put a
that's
floor
how those
lamp
work.
right next to the
No,
projector.
no, but if it's closer to the screen, that's okay a lot of times because it's
Right.
rejecting those angles. You're not going to reflect that floor lamp's light back to you, the viewer.
Right. Right. And I have to say, ambient light rejecting, or ALR, is a good term, but it's really, as you just said, ambient light redirecting and absorbing.
Right.
Doesn't roll off
Yeah,
the tongue as well, but it's
it
not
does
really
it.
rejected. It just puts it somewhere else than in your eyes.
Yeah, it's really redirecting. So if you think about it, if I've got my screen directly in front of us and I've got a window to the right, that light's going to come in, hit the screen, and the optical layers and the technology is going to bounce it away from the viewer instead
Yep.
of returning it to the viewer. And
Yep.
because of that, I get to maintain and focus on the light from the projector, which is going into the screen and coming back to the viewer. And that's where we really pick up our contrast, our color, and have a great image, even in rooms with those bright windows, lights off to the side, and so on, especially with black diamond or high ambient light rejecting material.
Right. So the other type of screen now that's gaining importance, I think, is a screen designed for ultra short throw projectors, or what we sometimes call TV replacement. Right?
Absolutely.
You've got a little projector, or maybe big, sitting up right next to the wall, and it's shooting light straight up almost onto the screen. And that screen has to be designed in a very special way so that light coming up in this direction gets reflected back straight toward the viewer. How the heck do you do that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so with the ultra short throw projectors, they present a unique challenge for a projection screen manufacturer, because traditionally we would have the projector more of your typical throw, which would be behind you and generally above the top center, in line with the top center of the projector, but behind the viewer it's elevated, and it's more of a head-on angle. So that angle of attack is directly into the screen from farther back. With an ultra short throw projector, our throw ratio is then condensed to sometimes, you know, 0.1, 0.2 times away from the width of the screen. And because of that, now you think about a traditional ambient light rejecting screen like a black diamond or a slate, what would it do? It would reject the light coming from that angle. It
Right,
would be a
because it's
very,
expecting light coming from that projector across the room, almost straight at it.
absolutely, like you see there. And so with a short throw projector, the way that they're designed to work is it's a lenticular screen, and so the light comes up from the bottom. It hits these triangles that Phil's popped up on the screen here for us, and it's angled to where that image gets reflected back to us, the viewer. But as you see on the top part, there's some special coatings and optics in there that really absorb a ton of overhead light. And with that, you can really have TV-like images and replacement that you wouldn't traditionally have with a standard projector throw and so on. And
Hmm.
because of this technology, I mean, we put this screen out on the CEDIA trade show floors and everything like that,
Come here.
at the
Talk about.
convention centers, and you're talking about tons of overhead light, and you still really have a great picture image. In fact, the screen that's over my left shoulder here, there's a lot of light in this room. I even have a spotlight on me right now, and that
Hmm.
screen is still able to produce bright, vibrant, high contrast images because of the ALR technology that's specific to an ultra short throw projector that's paired with that screen.
Right,
And as you guys have seen, and I'm sure the viewers are going to see, more and more manufacturers are even entering the projector game. Some of the bigger manufacturers that are in the TV space are starting to enter the projector game with TV replacements. Now screens getting up to 120, 130 inches that are
yeah,
viable in a living room.
Yeah.
yeah,
Now,
exactly.
also, you got
Samsung
to
did
remind
one.
these guys, since we have some young people here who are buying, these screens are directional. If you hang it
They are
upside
direct.
down, it ain't gonna work
Yeah.
properly. A,
That's
a
right.
lot of people ask me, can I ceiling mount a ultra short throw? You can. It is an absolute nightmare to do it, but you can. But you also have to take the screen
And flip it upside down.
and
Yeah.
flip it upside
So,
down. So,
and think about it if you flip it upside down, Phil, especially because generally you want your eyesight, your line of where your eyes line up with the screen about a third of the way from the bottom of the screen. So now that screen is very, very tall. Well, now I'm looking at look at the picture that you have up here. Now I'm looking at the bottom. I'm going to see a dim image. It's
Mhm.
not going to be that bright image we're looking for. And in order to get that to line up with these ultra super projectors, my screen's going to be mounted very high, and that's not an optimal position.
Yeah, so
Sometimes in the
you're
right
looking
environment,
up like this, like the fire, like the guy that hangs
It,
his TV above his
oh
right,
fireplace,
man,
right.
like me, because
yeah,
which we never use it because it's like you're watching it like this.
It's too
I
high.
can't
Yeah.
stand. I always say, don't. Whatever you do, don't put your TV above your fireplace because you're gonna kill yourself.
But it looks
Absolutely.
so
Well, and then where's
pretty,
the light
Scott.
coming from? Yeah, it looks nice, but where's the light coming from? It's bouncing off the ceiling. It's now coming into my picture. It's washing out my image.
Exactly.
So
Your can lights are up there.
yeah,
You know, so it just it's there's so many challenges. Um, just a traditional on this table, on the stand works. Now, I have a question for you since we're talking
sure.
about this type of material. Um, certain projectors have a steeper approach angle. Like if you look at some of
Mhm.
some professional pieces, it's 100 something inches from 2 feet away, and then
Right.
some of them are 100 something inches from 7 inches away. How critical is it to match those to make sure the material works with the proper ultra short throw projector?
That's a great question. I don't have the spec off the top of my head, but I want to say it's between like zero point 0.1 and zero point 0.3 is what the material is rated for. Obviously, the further away you get from that throw, you're going to start blocking out some of that projected light instead of the ambient light. And so it's in your best interest to definitely stick within the manufacturer specs of the screen and the projector to pair that together.
Yeah. So
What
you post
specifically
the
does that?
specs. Hmm?
Sorry, Phil. I just wanted to interject. What does that 0.1 to 0.3 really mean?
Yeah, good question. So throw ratio, or I'm sorry, throw distance is the distance you can be based on the width of the screen. Oftentimes people will think it's the diagonal. So if I have a 1.0 throw ratio and I've got a 100-inch wide screen based on the width, that means my projector should be 100 inches away from my screen. With a
Mm-hmm.
0.1, we're talking about the projector lens being roughly 10 inches away from a 100-inch wide screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just the relationship of the projector throw to the actual screen, lens to screen material.
To the screen width, and that's important because most of the
Correct.
time with an image, a TV, we're talking about diagonal, and so that's another thing that bugs me in this industry is projector screens really should be specified by width, but if they're 16 by 9, they're sometimes still specified by diagonal, and okay, I got to make that conversion.
Yeah.
It
And
costs
I
me another.
hate math. That's where these tools come in
There you
because you
Well,
go.
can punch in what you're looking for, you
and
know?
I hate doing the math, but I love that the math is there. And so SI's made it simple for you. If you go to screeninnovations.com, we have some tools on the right-hand side that can help you out with the drop-down menu. Everything from screen size calculators, helping you decide what kind of seating distance, what size of screen you might want based on that seating distance. Also on the screen material wizards that will help you understand what kind of contrast you should expect, what kind of brightness you should expect. And then I threw this other picture in here on the VideoCalc in the center because if you're a dealer or an integrator, it's a really handy tool. I use it all the time. I use it on the iOS, the App Store, and it's a tool I use every week, and so it's a handy one. For a few bucks, it's well worth it.
Oh, that's an app on a smartphone or something.
It is, yeah. And so it's great because you can punch in some different things and you can see you can see things like throw ratio, you can see luminance, you can see brightness and so on. It's a great tool.
Mm-hmm.
Change your aspect ratios and do all kinds of fun stuff with it.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about design elements. Clearly, you're putting a big old rectangle on your wall. And in a dedicated theater, okay, you expect to see that. But in a family room, how do you,
Yeah.
what are the choices that people have?
Yeah, visually it needs to look as good as it does in the performance side of things, right? So when we think about how it's going to integrate in our lifestyle, it really has a lot to do with design, and it's important that the design gets right. So in 2011, SI came out with the world's first zero-edge projection screen, and so that was the picture you were just seeing. And this is basically a bezel-less or near bezel-less projection screen. It's about a 1/4 inch wide on the bezel, but when this is hanging on the wall, especially with a black diamond material, which is our high ambient light rejection material, it kind of, when it's off, looks like a flat panel television. And then when it's
Mm-hmm.
on, of course, you've got a great high contrasty image. But this is different than your traditional fixed frame, which is about a 3.5 inch velvet wrapped bezel that you can also get. Now, to your point, Scott, in a dedicated theater room, a lot of times you're dimming down the light. You can save a little bit of money, right, by going with a fixed frame, and you don't really see it because it blends away. Your eye is drawn to the image. You're sucked into that movie, that story that the director or the artist are creating, and the
Mm-hmm.
bezel just disappears. But when you have to have the lights on and it's in a media room, a game room, or anything like that, you really want it to look good off as it does on. And one of the things that we've also done is we've introduced LEDs around the edges so you can get some different colors. So if it's your favorite football team, so the Aggies are playing tomorrow, and so when I'm watching them, I might want to turn on a little bit of that red LED light around it for the bezel, and that gives it a little bit of a glow. If you're a Green Bay
Well,
fan, you might turn on green. There you go. If you've maybe the LSU Tigers, right? You've got a little bit of purple going or something like that, and that's
you
just a
know,
fun way to kind of get the game going.
sure, but you certainly wouldn't want to do that in any kind of reference viewing.
No, of course not, right? So it's going to take away. It's going to introduce color reflecting off the walls and so on. So
Right.
critical watching, reference watching, you don't want to do that. But from a fun perspective, it definitely has its perks.
Now, as a reference viewer, and I myself am more of a reference viewer. Can you take these LEDs and tune them to D65 white? Can you make a
So
bias light essentially?
that's a great question. We have a couple different versions, and you can mix the RGB. So yes, you can get them there. They don't have a setting directly for D65, but they can be controlled via Philips Hue on our IP version. So
Ah,
you
yes.
can pull up your color wheel and you can adjust intensity, brightness, and then different color options. And there may be some things coming for a little bias light that we can set on the future as well.
Okay, I do recommend that. I mean,
Yeah.
projectors obviously are not nearly as bright as a
hmm
flat panel TV, but I know plenty of people, Joe Kane among them, who still
hmm
recommends having a bias light behind your projection screen.
hmm Yeah, there's a couple of benefits, right, with bias lighting. It helps your eye, which is a muscle. It helps it from opening and closing so fast and reacting to those bright images, dark images, and so on.
Yep.
The other, so that really having that bias light, your eye doesn't get as much of that fatigue that happens as you're watching over time. You don't want to
Right.
get tired while you're watching a movie and so on. And so a bias light definitely has a lot of benefits.
Right. So good.
One more thing on design, we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about zero edge and fixed, but then there's also motorized options. So if
That
you
was my next question.
I thought you might be going there, but yeah, if you think about the different design aspects, maybe you don't want this projection screen there all the time. Maybe you want a screen to drop down on Friday nights for movie night, or on the weekends for the game or whatnot. So you can have a motorized screen drop down like our Solo Pro line, which is a
Mhm.
very small cassette, a little under 3 inches. So it can be conveniently tucked up against the ceiling, and you can drop down up to 160-inch diagonal image out of a small cassette that kind of tucks away. The other thing you can do is you can do a traditional flush mount screen that would be recessed into your ceiling, and you can have the screens drop down and give you that experience of it's gone when I don't want it, but it's there whenever I need it. And one of the things that our team had talked about whenever we were looking at motorized screens is you look at how do you position your living room, right? Where do the chairs want to go? We want them to go to the view. So if you've got a view of the mountains or a lake house or the golf course or even just a beautiful front yard, and you want to orient your living room that looks out that way, you don't want a television to always be that distraction. There you go.
Right.
So if I've got this nice, beautiful view, I want to have a motorized screen drop down whenever I want it, and then I want it to disappear and go away so I can have my view back whenever I'm not using it.
Yeah. Now, some screen materials, though, are not well suited for motorization, which means rolling them up
hmm
into a thing. I mean, as I recall, ALR screens have a harder time. I mean, UST screens, ultra short throw with that lenticular uh, structure, I think are not as well suited to that as other types of screens. Am I right, or am I misinformed?
Kind of. We have advanced some technology on it with the backing where we can do actually the short throw in a solo option. So the
Really?
screen behind me can roll up, and so you
Hmm.
can have that ultra short throw material, that lenticular material that rolls up. Now, what we did have to do is we had to work on the backer on that a little bit, had to make it a little bit thinner. And unfortunately, one drawback to that is that it's not 100% opaque. So we don't recommend that you put that particular screen in front of a window because you could get some
Oh.
light from behind it that would
Hmm.
cause a reduction in your contrast. Now, you're
Hmm.
right though, if you think about like Black Diamond, because of its semi-rigid, multi-layered approach
Right.
to the optical layers, we can't roll that one up, right? And so unfortunately, it does better on your zero edge and non-rollable options, but
Hmm.
projection screens like our slate material still allow you to roll that up. And slate happens to be 100% opaque, so you could even drop it in front of the windows.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So did you send me the solo that you loaned me? Is that going to be that's a UST, right? I think
It
that's
is.
okay. So yeah, so I get to play with it, Scott.
Oh
I get to
man,
Yeah.
play with it.
I
I
want to
have a
hear about
slate in
that.
my living room, and now I have a ProSolo. I am like the screen Pied Piper. I have screens everywhere. So so
Yeah.
yeah.
I did have another question for Jason, which is,
Sure.
what's the difference between slate and black diamond?
That's a good question. Okay, so slate is our middle ground ambient light rejection material.
Hmm.
It's a PVC vinyl based material with special optical coatings that we have that allow it to reject some of the ambient light. It rejects up to about 65% of ambient light from that optimal kind of the viewing cones and so on. And when you move into black diamond, because if it's semi-rigid, multi-layered approach, it does better with ambient light rejection. It's the world's best ambient light rejection screen, high ambient light rejection and so on, but it's up to 85% ambient light rejection where over the slate. Now, there's a little bit of trade-off. I can't roll it up, and there's a little bit more cost to it, but I get a big impact in performance. And so whenever I'm looking at my contrast, that's where Black Diamond really comes into play in those living room environments and so on.
Got it.
You know, the other benefit, and one of the things I really like about Black Diamond, is it helps keep your media room dark, right? So when I go into my media room, I didn't choose to paint it very dark. It's a mixed use room, it's a media room, and so it has a little bit of a lighter color palette on the walls. Not bright white or anything, but just it's more reflective than, say, a dedicated theater room. So if I shine a really bright image, like, you know, the movie Sunshine, it comes up, you've got the yellow, the lights that start to come in, my walls start to reflect some of that. With an ambient light rejection screen like Slate and Black Diamond, you don't get as much of that reflection. It's not bouncing the light, scattering it all over the room, so less light pollution in the room itself because of that, the way it works as well.
Excellent point. That
so help keep your dark room dark.
The same reason that it redirects light coming in at steep angles, it'll also not reflect light coming straight in out at steep angles.
You got it.
Unlike a Lambertian screen,
which
will reflect light in all directions.
Everywhere. Yeah, perfectly uniform. A white Lambertian screen is going to go every direction. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. So we have to remember that projection is an interdependent activity. It depends upon a few things, and we can go back to the race car analogy, I think, to reiterate that you the projector, we spend a lot of time talking about projectors, but if you don't talk about the screen and the type of screen and so on, you're not really addressing the entire experience.
Right. It's important to understand that it is interdependent. There's a reason it's called two-piece projection. And really, we like to say three-piece projection because the room, the racetrack plays, right? It's important. I'm not going to choose that screen that's going to go to the dedicated theater room, to your point earlier about reference quality, reference color out of the projector and so on, and throw that in my living room and expect that same experience. But I can, you know, if I'm dead set on this particular projection screen model, right? I'm sorry, projector model, and I really want that particular model because it's what I think is going to be the best and so on, and then I throw it in there and I don't have the right solution of a screen and my environment's off, I'm not doing myself any favors by buying that particular projector. I went and hired a really good race car driver and then, you know, gave him the keys to the wrong car in the wrong space, right? And so it's important to make sure that this interdependent system goes together to deliver that solution of that what we're expecting. We expect high contrast. Contrast is key, right? If I can't see the image, then what's the point? And so it's important to have the right material, for the right room and with the right projector. And oftentimes our clients will call us and say, hey, you know, I'm going to spend a little bit more money on a projection screen and I'm going to reduce a little bit of the budget on the projector itself because the overall solution is what I'm trying to deliver to my clients. And then there's other times where we tell people, hey, based on your environment and so on, to get the best picture quality, step it down a little bit. You don't need that Black Diamond in this particular room, or you don't need this material in that particular room. And so go with the right pairing. You can do a little bit better on the projector here, given the budget that you've given us.
What do you think of the companies that are now getting into ultra short throw that are including a screen with the projector? I mean, that kind of addresses this issue, doesn't it?
It does to some degree. And I think it's, you know, I understand the play, right? And it's not so much in what our CI custom world that you generally see that. But we do see it in some of the different retail environments and online and so on. And I think for them, it's really the solution to, I want to deliver this TV replacement. And as we're entering the marketplace. But when it comes into performance, right? This is what we do day in and day out. This is what our engineers work on. This is what we think about all the time. And when it comes to performance, you can't match the performance that comes into the quality, the ALR, the technology, the design, the color, and so on that comes into this. Those are going to be your more basic screens, because what are they really good at doing? They're great at making projectors, right? Half of them don't want to get into the screen business, but they understand that it's better than projecting on your wall, right? And that's what we all agree on.
Yes, we can all agree on that.
and so, you know, in some markets and some price points, it's going to make sense to possibly do something like that. But most of the time, you're going to benefit from having a higher ambient light rejection material, the different form factors such as those motorized, the solos, the sleek ones, ZeroG, and so on. And so
Right.
you can see right here. And then, you know, what I also love about some of these ultra short throw projectors is that cabinetry, right? If you look at that
Right.
picture in front of you, Salamander and BDI and Aegis and a couple of other manufacturers are making different cabinets for these ultra short throw projectors that really can look great in your environment as well. So it's all about the solution and what does that kind of look like for you.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that too, and I go back and forth because I love the whole concept of an ultra short throw. Kids don't walk in front of it. I can use it like a TV and the whole thing. But a lot of times, I would like the whole system to disappear. And
Yeah.
most of these systems come with a fixed screen. So even though I don't have, I got a big heavy black box on the wall to put a lightweight big box on the wall.
Bigger box on the wall.
Bigger box on the wall. So having something like a ProSolo that with the proper material, if I can hit a switch and now I can have a painting and everything else, and they go, you don't have a TV in this room, and you go, and all of a sudden your cabinet pops open and this thing slides out and a screen comes down, and now I have a bigger TV than you. You know,
Right.
you measure your TV in inches, I measure mine in feet, you know, kind of
That's
thing.
right.
And then when it goes away, it goes away. So those
Right. It
are
doesn't
some
have
of
to
the
be the focal
flexibility.
point anymore.
Doesn't
Yeah.
have to be the focal point. So there's some advantages of for that consumer who just wants it all as one package and he knows it's going to work. But there's also some advantages of being able to customize it to meet the environments that you're in. So
Right. And you said, I talked a little bit about the design customization, but on the
mhm,
other note is also size, right? The manufacturers that are going to include a screen, they're going to have set sizes. Whenever you look at what Screen Innovations can offer, I can do inch by inch offerings that really fit your space. So if you're dropping this into that cabinet because it's not supposed to be the overall design aspect, it's up to 160 inches, but inch by inch diagonal. So whenever you look at what fits in your environment, we can make that work.
Hey, Jason, do you guys work at all with cabinet manufacturers like Salamander to do these rising screens that come out of the cabinet?
That's a great question. We don't right now, but I will definitely pass on that feedback, and we'll see what the comments say. We'll see if some of the audience wants us to do that, then we can get to work on some of that stuff. And
We
that's one
have
of the nice
seen.
things about. Yeah, I was gonna say it's one of the nice things about Screen Innovations. I mean, we're small enough to be flexible and nimble, and we really put our engineers to work and do some very cool things. And then we can also be big enough to, of course, produce a lot of these great products and the technologies that are out there.
Yeah. Hey, Phil, we got any questions from the audience?
somebody was asking about that software program again, which is VideoCalc. For you people who I'm getting ready to download this right now, to be honest with you, because it's nice to have. So somebody's asking where was
That's
that
the
app
app.
that you could do all of the things on.
Sure.
That does look really, really useful and interesting.
I
Exactly.
really
So
like it because it's called VideoCalc and then the video and the calc, there's no space in between it. So it's one word. I think it's like $3, but like I said, well worth it, especially if you're going to use it as often as we do. But I like because you can go in and you can put in things like aspect ratio. You can put in the lumens on your projector, the lumens that are actually hitting your screen, depending on what projector mode you're in and so on. And it will give you your luminance back in foot lamberts and so on. You can also see, it'll do the math for you like Phil was talking about. So it'll show you square inches and screen surface area. You can punch in things like throw ratio. There's some geometry things that happen with it, whether you're using, different aspect ratios, anamorphic lenses, and so on. And so that's a great tool that we use, in partnership with some of the different tools that we offer on our website in order to make sure that we get the right solution for the customer.
And I do want to spend a little bit of time also talking a little bit more about the ProSolo, because one of the biggest hassles about a projection screen is mounting it on the wall, the size of the case, and where the heck am I going to get the power? Okay.
Right.
And half the time I just had each time I have a couple different screens from a couple different manufacturers, and the biggest thing was getting the electrician to come and pull the electrical wire so I could power the thing,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
You wanted to pull that wire
and
through the wall? Is that what you're saying?
exactly, because hey, I want to hang this here, and they go, well, there's no outlet there. So now I have to go grab one from the attic, running all the way through, or it's over here at the bottom of your cabinet, and then there's a fire block, and now I got to cut 3 holes to get the power up there, and all this stuff. A lot of times one of the biggest problems of, so most people that say, you know what, just put a fixed screen on there, because getting the power there to make it go up and down sometimes can cost you $500-600. So
Yeah,
so what does this one do? How does this one solve that problem?
so to Phil's point, that may put you out of the budget. And you said attic access. A lot of these rooms don't have attic access, especially if there's a
welcome to
floor.
California, baby.
Right, a lot of challenges. And so if you down in the picture you've got displayed at the bottom right, there's a few different things we do for this. A lithium ion battery built in, so a rechargeable battery. It has a little magnetic induction charger, and so you can recharge it. It should last you about a year or so with regular daily use on even on a 120-inch size. Yeah, and so on. And so you pop it in, recharge it, let it charge for a few hours, and then you're going to put the cable back in the closet, and you're going to hope you find it next time, right? So
Yeah,
that's
well,
what happens
there
with
is
me.
that.
And then the other thing you can do is you can run it off low voltage, and so you can even do things like run a trigger to it to command it to drop off of your control system if you're integrating it with home automation or anything like that. And then you can even, if you don't have a power source, but you can, maybe it's less expensive to just get like a 16 gauge 2-conductor wire to it, then you can use a wall wart back at the base station and run a power cable via speaker wire over to your Solo Pro and power it that way. And then of course your standard 110 volt AC outlet. So lots of power options to give you to overcome those challenges that we were just talking about.
Looks like a really elegant solution. Small, bunch of different colors.
These are the standard colors that we offer lots of different colors. The other thing that I really like about this, so the shape used to be a little different. It used to have some rounded edges. And we're not talking about this necessarily today, but Screen Innovations offers an entire window shade covering line. And one of the things that we did with our window covering line is we have different bracketry to make it very easy to mount and install those window coverings inside of your housing. And so one of the designs they came up with was an L-shaped bracket that could mount to either the ceiling or the back wall, and it has a cam lever on the back of it. And it mounts very simple and very easy, that even in a larger size screen, 100-inch, 120-inch, 130-inch screen, once you get those brackets in there, you can have one person hang this screen, get it lined up, and lock it in with the cam locks on the brackets. And it's very easy to install. It's clean, it's small. You can get the color that maybe blends in with your wall so it doesn't really stand out, or maybe you want a color that does pop out a little bit, and it's got that image pop, that contrast for you.
Yeah, it's a cool design.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very popular seller. In fact, when we introduced it, it really started to take over some of that traditional motorized sizes where you had like an 8-inch sized housing, because that's a big difference on the look in your room. And so we wanted it to be small, elegant, clean, and really just to be able to disappear whenever you're not using it. And lots of different screen materials that are offered, whether it's your whites, your grays, your slate ambient light rejection materials, or even your Ultrashort throws.
Yeah, you guys, because first it was like, man, I love it, but I wish it was bigger. You go, here, I love it, but I wish it had ambient light material. Here, I love it, but it doesn't. I wish it worked with a UST projector. Here, so it's pretty cool, So I think that's just an example of just thinking about customer pain, how it looks, how am I going to power it, is two customer pain points that sometimes may kill the deal, basically.
Yeah. So
the other one we never pointed out was the one with the wires. We didn't talk about that one. The one, you still make that one?
We do. We have what's called our ZeroG or zero gravity. And what's really cool about this particular projection screen, it drops down and it floats. It almost levitates. So it's a very cool screen. And sometimes, with projection screens, the taller, just to talk a little tech, right? Kind of, the taller the overall material is in relationship to how wide it is, you start to get curling and things that are just not wanting to play well with projection screens. And so what's nice about, think about a 2-story living room that wants to have this big picture experience drop down, right? And get down to normal viewing height. Well, now I may have to have drop in excess of 4, 5, 6 feet or so on. And that's a really difficult for a projection screen manufacturer to get, because that relationship of height times width changes. We always want to be wider significantly on the projection screen. So what ZeroG allows us to do is it allows us to do 15.5 feet drop before you get to the top of the screen. So you could have from there a 160-inch image, another 8 feet or so. So now I've got a very long drop projection screen that can just elegantly float out of the ceiling, and there it is, and you can see it just kind of levitating there in front of that space.
Yes.
Sometimes you may do that on the cable systems because you want to put speakers above it, and obviously since there's no material, you've got the speakers placed above it, it's not blocking the sound or anything, and it can drop in front of that window and cover it up. And then again, two-story living room environments, very clean, modern feel. It's a really cool image that could just drop down and float there for your projection screen.
This is kind of baller status, but I'm sure it's not cheap.
It's not the least expensive screen in the world. It's pretty technical.
I'm sure, to make this thing work reliably, I could see it being a little bit of cash. But it is a cool design. Like I said, that back because nobody wants that big sheet of black hanging down before the screen comes down. Just having it kind of drop down cleanly. And it's just these wires, and then once it's done, just have it just go right back up is pretty cool. And you can adjust that link too, so it's really easy to determine.
It's up to. So even if when you order it, you can order it in two versions: a shorter or a longer drop. And the shorter drop goes several feet, but the long drop goes up to 15.5. It doesn't mean you have to go that far. You can go 12 feet, 10 feet, or so on. So you can get that image position where you want it. 15.5 feet. Yeah, at TV, you would see it just drop down from across the room. I mean, it was crazy. So very cool.
That is pretty cool.
I have a question. I have a totally unrelated question here, Jason.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier about acoustic transparency and perforation, what we call microperf, I guess, in the home industry. What is your feeling about that versus woven screens?
It's a great question. I'll answer it and then I'll tell you a quick story. So the microperforating acoustically is not quite as strong as some of the woven fabric. So if the audio is of the utmost importance to you, then a woven fabric material like our Maestro material is going to be better. The trade-off is visually it's woven, so it's not as flat, right? So the image is not quite as flat, and these come in white. So again, it needs to be
only
a
white,
dedicated room, only white from SI. Yeah, and I don't think anybody else makes a ALR fabric that would be.
No, I have never heard of one.
No, so it's that dark dedicated room only. Generally, like a reference theater there, where they want the audio in the proper place behind the screen. Where I really like about the microperf is there may be about a 3 dB drop in some of the upper frequencies. So some of your higher notes, your upper mids, and so a lot of times the receivers with room correction and so on, they can counter that. But you
can that out.
And so in my own personal room, I chose an ALR screen because for me, and this is the story, I didn't like hearing the audio come from below the waistline, I'll say, right? The last thing I want to do is hear the voice up here, but then it constantly is lower where my center speaker is at. So I put in-wall speakers behind my screen, did some room correction. I think it sounds phenomenal. And now the vocals are coming right where I'm watching. And I had one of my best friends came over last weekend, and he said, that speaker placement is so much better than where it was. And he was a big fan of the previous system, but now he's like, that's where it's designed. And think about when you go to a movie theater, where are those speakers located?
Oh, they're behind the screen. They're behind a perforated screen.
Right.
Especially as the screens get bigger, because then you start getting it starts to get more and more and more detached. So so I would love to have a space to have a screen big enough that I would say, I still
move to Texas. We got big rooms.
Yeah, you do. California, man. I don't have a basement that I could turn into a theater room like you and Rob and the rest of these.
We don't have as many basements here, but those bonus rooms are pretty, they're above the garage and so on, just a little bit more space,
Right.
Exactly. Okay, so let me see if there's any other additional questions or things that I want to cover. But thanks again, Jason, for coming. I always like an old man looking at the questions because I have my screen turned down, the brightness turned down. They're like, why is that old guy looking at the screen?
I think this is great. Thanks so much for hosting and allowing us to be a part of it. And if any viewers out there have any questions, contact us at screeninnovations.com. You can hit us up. We'll be happy to help you out, answer your questions, and bring that big picture home.
So thanks again, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Scott, for giving me a hand with this, so I don't have to pontificate for 4 hours in a row. I could do it, but I'd rather have.
I'm sure you could, but I'm happy to pontificate for you for a couple hours. No question about it.
Okay, so thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.